we try to find people who can feed the need that we have. And often enough, we will find the person that feeds our need the most and say, you know what, you're familiar, so you fit well into this even though you don't have the right credentials to fit in this context, but because you feel so familiar, I think you're a good match. So we trauma match and then call it a relationship, or trauma bond, and then call it a relationship. But the amazing thing happens, which society will also deem as the opposite of, when you're in a relationship with somebody and you heal the trauma bond and you heal that trauma, or you start to work on that trauma that brought you together, you are no longer in sync with the other person, so that creates problems. So now the relationship is ruined because you decided to heal.
Welcome to the Poetic JustUS Podcast. I am your host, Jen. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please go ahead and click like and subscribe, because this is going to be an amazing conversation that you just do not want to tune out of. So make sure you're tuning in. And I have an amazing guest with me today by the name of Theo. Theo, is it Theo Brown?
Yeah. You
had to think about it.
I was like,
I think so. Today it is.
Wait a minute. Yeah, it is. That is my name.
Theo Brown. Is Theo like short for Theodore?
Oh, so that's a misconception. It's actually Theophilus.
Ooh.
Dignified. No.
Theophilus.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, that's the translation in English. And in my actual name is Theophile. So, sounds French. It is French. But Theophilus is the English translation.
Wow. Listen,
it's very biblical.
Already coming with the layers.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Listen, I'm a PK, so it's as biblical as it's going to get. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah, I was very blessed to be given such a studious name.
Yeah.
Because, my other siblings were not as fortunate. Because my oldest brother's name is Tim. Boring. My sister's name is Grace. Okay. Youngest brother's name is Jonathan.
Wow.
And I got Theophilus. So, and I'm the middle child. So I also got that playing on my side as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I read that I did not know this. And it kind of like, it made sense once I saw it, but you are a vet, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
so
yes.
tell me, like, how long did you serve, or are you retired?
Yeah, so I am medically retired. I did some time in the military. It sounds like I did jail time, but
Did some time.
I did some time.
Some people, like, it feels that way, though.
Truth to be told, it sometimes does feel that way,
Yeah.
especially when you're transitioning out, because it's like trying to reacclimate to civilian life,
Yeah.
civilian population. Even the terminology is kind of similar. It's weird.
Civilian.
Yeah.
You're civilian now. Welcome.
I'm more civilian then. Okay. So I did about 10 years. And then I was medically retired in 2016. So I joined in 2006.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
what was you doing in 2006?
What was I doing?
Yeah.
2006?
I mean, that was like the year of T-Pain.
Yeah. What was I doing? You really want to know?
But it's 2006. And so, I mean, you think about 2006, like that era of music influenced the way that we see 2000 and really the early 2000s into 2006. I'm always thinking like, man, what song was really like popping at that time?
You telling my daughter, she's the same way. Like we relate the phases of our lives based on the genre of music that was going. Yeah.
Listen, it was, Maroon 5 was hot.
Yeah.
Justin Timberlake was hot. Yeah.
Okay. So, but that's interesting though. So when did you decide, or how has that transition been for you? Because now you are a master barber.
Right.
And how did that how did you get into doing that as it relates to coming out of is that something you always wanted to do, or you just had kind of this? Because I know when I read your, because I do my research. Okay,
Wait, did I send you my bio?
You're not coming on my show without me already knowing things. Oh, okay. You don't got to send me no bio. I'm Google. Okay,
you do your research.
I do my research.
I love it.
So, but one thing that I did see was that that you enjoy the idea of transformation.
Yes.
And then thinking about that, and Edify curls, right? That's because that's what we all call them. Edify. Mr. Edify. And then I stumbled across the fact that you're an actual edifying coach. So talk to me about how you went from, we're talking about like a timeline here of how you went from being in the Army or being in the military, transitioning out of that role, and then seeing this yourself in this space of transformation for people through and by health and beauty and coaching. How did that transition for you?
Man, that's a deep question, Jen.
Yeah, I jumped right into it.
I appreciate it because. Okay, so I used to cut my own hair, by the way. So as most Black males growing up, we all have the T outliners. That's going to be our most coveted tool because that's going to get us our lineups in between cuts. And we all, growing up, I had Walmart walls, and I would cut my brother's hair. And so about my junior year, I started shaving my head like in high school. It was just like, this whole hair thing is not my thing. And so I've been bald for forever and a day. But when I joined the military, I was like, well, I need to make some extra gas money. So let me go ahead and utilize. Man, I messed some people up. But the beauty of that, though, it was when I joined the Marine Corps, because I joined the Marine Corps in 2006, it was every Monday we had to have a fresh haircut. It didn't matter how it looked like, as long as it was skinned on the sides and your cover could cover up whatever mess that's in there. So, yeah. So, every drunk Marine at the barracks needed a cut before formation Monday morning, and I was a $5 barber, so I got really good at messing people up. And then over time, I learned how to fix it, and then that's kind of what put me in that. But then over time, I also started to realize that it was a way of connecting with the guys that I served with, because you get to share life stories differently, and then. After that, my first deployment, I was on a ship, and then my specific duty at that time was to cut hair. So I was at the bottom of the boat majority of the time, cutting hair. Like it was a typical barbershop environment. So you get to know a lot of the guys. You get to know about their life before the military and what they're enjoying about life then, or what their disgruntledness is. And you get to really talk through about, certain things. And so through that was kind of where like the coaching really started. But it was more of just a conversation. And then as time went by, I would continue to cut hair. Two of my deployments, like I was cutting hair, and it was also a form of therapy for me, because it was more like after a long day of patrols, you want to come back and just do nothing that is related to the military. So cutting hair was like the easiest way to like hang out with the guys, get connected, really talk, release some stress in a way of just being present without being present. You kind of get to escape. And so doing that, then whenever I got out, I was like, you know what? Let me continue doing what I was doing. So I went to school for barbering. Down to Savannah Tech, and yeah, so that's kind of where it transitioned. But while I was because I switched services, so in 2010 I joined the Army. I got out of the Marine Corps, joined the Army. Now I also had soldiers, so I was like, okay, so now I'm leading people, humans, and and I'm having to deal with the human complexities of other adults who have families, but Sergeant Brown has to take care of them and their families. And so, coaching them through certain things, certain aspects of life that I hadn't even been into, like, some were single mothers. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. Like, I didn't. There was no handbook to prep me for what I would incur. Like, a few of my soldiers had kids, and I essentially had to step in the role of guardian father, significant other, in a way of like making sure that, hey, like, if you got to go in the back and pump, like, now I got to provide a place for you to do that. Now I got to take care of you and your baby. I got to make sure that there's enough time. I got to make sure that you're fit back to come back to duty. I was like, man, there's nothing in life that would have prepped me for this. And so through that, then I really got to understand, like, wow, humans really need a whole lot of help.
Yeah.
And
we do.
Yeah. And
we
so
don't know what we're doing. We just don't.
And I'm like, wow, nobody really has it figured out. So helping other people figure their lives out in a way that was also conducive to figuring my life out, it was really helpful. So yeah, that's kind of how all that kind of came together. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. So when it comes down to the edifying piece, I like that word. Sorry, edify. What drew you to that? Because there's all kinds of coaches, right? There's life coaching, there's business coaching, but I saw specifically, and it seems to be a theme for you, Edify was the significant thing that was drawn to you when it comes down to how you feel like you have helped people. Talk to me a little bit about that and why that piece. What does it mean first for those who don't know, and then also how is that inspired? That specific word kind of resonate with you to be able to do what you do.
So shout out to my brother BK. Brian Keith, he's the one that actually introduced me to that word. We're talking, is like, you seem to be more of an somebody who would like to edify others. I was like, but I do. Because I looked it up. I was like, oh, it means to uplift, it means to coach, it means to teach, it means to, like, really give people something to kind of just stand on. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I like that. And so I kind of ran with that, to be honest. I'm still, over time, it's taken a life of its own, but it's like still trying to embody that and really live that out. Because I don't like to just frivolously say words. I want to make sure that whatever I'm saying is coherent, both in my mind, in my heart, and also in my physical being. And so if I'm to edify somebody, I got to edify myself first. And so it's like, I can't uplift you if I'm not feeling uplifted. So it's like I got to put myself in a position where I can uplift myself to be able to say, okay, hey, I'm strong enough for you to stand on what I'm telling you. Or I've lived through whatever it is that I've lived through and worked through that for you to be able to take something from me and say, hey, I can utilize this in my life. So yeah, that's
what?
I'm glad you came out.
I'm glad you said it that way, because that just sparked a question for me to ask you. And then let me tell you why he's specifically here. Okay. Okay.
Why am I here, Jen?
Listen, we've had some conversations through IG Live, where I used to do a live called the Philosophy of Love and Friendship. And also Crystal, shout out to Crystal the Muse, where she was doing her Thought for Thursday lives as well. And it was kind of centered around these concepts of friendships and relationships and how all that works. And some of your insight has just like taken a whole new, I feel like, perspective on what that looks like. You know what I mean? And so I think it was just important for us to have this conversation openly about how the dynamics, like you were just saying, of humanness,
the human complexities, yes,
what it looks like, what I'm saying, and because it's nothing more. when I think of humans, I think about connections. I think about communication. I think about language, how we speak to each other, how we connect to each other. That is the foundation of our culture as humans, that we're considered feral without it. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why you're here. Because we're going to talk about all that.
Let's do it.
I wanted to, you know, because I stick pins when I hear certain things that resonate with me. And when you were saying that, I should have wrote it down because now I'm about to lose my thought. But when you were saying that, what was it that you just, the last thing you said about, oh, there it is. Okay. So when you are speaking to people, right? And or when other people are speaking to people, one thing that I have really been, when I say, let's see, very keen on, right, is the source, right? The source of information. There are some people that say, okay, well, just because you are, you know, you ain't got it together, don't mean you can't give valid insight to someone else who's trying to get it together. And I battle with that because I'm thinking, like, if you ain't got it together, why? You know what I'm saying? How you gonna tell me about what I need to do when, you know, you're either here, there,
right?
And or don't have the knowledge and actual experience. I don't even necessarily care about the credentials. You know what I mean? But you don't have the actual knowledge and experience to say that I can relate, because I think about like marriage, right? People go to their single friends, you know, when it comes down to discussing issues that's going on in their marriage or their long-term relationships. And then, you know, getting this insight from people who have never maintained a relationship longer than a couple months in their life. Not to say that they're discredited, right? Or they don't know anything about life. But how can they definitively give insight or advice or you know what I mean? Like, So when you said that, it made me think about that, and I would love to hear your thoughts about that. Being that you just said I'm not going to say anything that I can't stand on. You know what I'm saying? Like, talk to me about it and tell me your insight on that. Am I wrong? Am I? What do you think?
So personally, for me, I don't give advice.
Okay,
I just don't. I realize that advice is very one-sided. So I can't, there's nothing that I can ever advise anybody on, not relationships, no nothing. Like, I can only speak from my experience. And then whatever you take from that, you can take it and run with it. Because I realize that
that's fair.
Even for myself, there are some things I have no clue. I don't got it all together. And for me to give advice, I'm just like, no, I'm not. Even the term coaching, I hate the term coaching because it sounds so self-imposing. I can't coach you on your life. I don't live your life. I cannot coach you on anything. I can only give you an insight of a perspective. I can only say, hey, from what you're saying, this is what my thoughts are, and you can run with that. And you can choose to dissect that further or not. But for me, it's more of, let me tell you what I've experienced. Let me tell you what I'm experiencing, or let me tell you how my trauma has informed my perspective. And if we've had or shared some sort of trauma, then you can say, oh, okay, I can take some of that and kind of use it here. And most of the time I try to contextualize things because not everything fits in every category, but it's more of wherever I'm speaking from, I put context to it because I want to make sure that, hey, just because I say this is how I dealt with this in this context. It doesn't apply. It might not apply to that other context that you got going on. But in my context, this is what happened. And so early on, whenever I would hear people talk about relationships, I was like, is it though? Like, that sounds very subjective. It sounds like, because, like, you know, you would hear the typical, relationship coaching. Well, this is how you treat your woman, and women function like this, and then man, in turn, God made man. I'm like,
right.
But did he though?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Or are you just repeating some regurgitated information that you're just, And so for me, I would often question, like, where's that coming? Because it's like, you're giving me information predicated upon your marriage or relationship to that person who is not my person. I'm not married to them, nor am I married to you. So the information that you give me, it's great information for you. It worked in your situation. It's not across the board. And so that's literally where I was like, I can't, I'm not giving nobody advice. I can only say, hey, in my context, this is how this worked out, or this is how it didn't. I'm not saying it can't work for you, or it can. I'm just saying, for me, this is how it's worked out. And you choose to do that with what you will. And so when we would have those conversations, I would often say, hey, for me, this is how I see it. I can't generalize because not everybody is, because I can't say, well, all black men. Yeah. Because that is such a broad, thing to say.
Super broad, yeah.
Or all black women. To me, that is so terrible when it's utilized in that way. But again, we are informed by our past, and if we've dealt with our past, then we can better be informed in the present of, hey, maybe not all of them are like this, but the people that I've dealt with are like this, or the people that I attract tend to be like this. And so that's the kind of the perspective that I come from.
So where do you feel like or I should say, do you feel like the idea that people are looking for these concrete answers from someone else in that way, do you feel like it's related to this, like you said, this generalized societal thing that we are supposed to be in these sort of roles within relationships based on whether we're black men, black women, whatever, however we associate or identify, there's certain roles that we should be playing, and that is cultivating this culture of, we can generalize this to say that this is how you should handle this situation, this is how you should handle this situation, as opposed to seeing it, like you're saying, for what your relationship is. What do you feel like do you think that's kind of the societal expectations?
Ew. Ooh. Even.
And we're gonna talk about that because I got a question. Expectations in relationships. Right. We're gonna get on that. But do you feel like that is the underbelly from where that kind of advice aspect stems from? Because we see a lot of people doing exactly what you said nowadays, especially on the internet, where there's this megaphone of everybody's opinion. Do you think society is obviously the cause of that, or do you think is more or less people just really needing that sort of validation? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's both, honestly. Yeah. I think we want concrete answers to a very unconcrete solution. And yeah, it keeps us mentally sane. Yeah, it keeps us safe. It gives us that consistency of, well, at least I know it's this. It's like, no, life is forever changing. So there's truths, there's generalized truths, right? But life is always changing, and there is nothing that is concrete. And so when we try to find a concrete answer in a life that's forever evolving, we put ourselves in a position to always be disappointed.
Sorry.
True story.
Expectations. We're gonna get to that.
Okay. So
speak on it. I'm gonna be quiet.
So when I pulled in today, I was like, oh, okay. I pull in, I see parking spaces. Oh, okay. Parking spaces. I'm gonna go park. It's a parking spot. All right. I get out of my car. I'm walking. And then I realized, oh, that's not where I'm supposed to park. Let me go move my car before I get towed. Like, naturally, you see park and you park. Like, that is what you do. But then you read the context that a parking space is in. Like, hey, this is staff only parking, and you're not staff, so you cannot park here. I could have just said, you know what, bump that. Like, it's a parking spot. It ain't got nobody's name on it. It's a parking spot. But no, that parking place is designated for those people. So my expectation would have been, well, it's a parking spot. It shouldn't matter. Well, but it does. So I can't put my perspective of what matters or what doesn't matter to the rules that stand, right? So that is concrete. That place is for that specific function. That's concrete. Now, should they block this whole entire area off and it's a party that's going on? Now the rules change. That parking spot now is multi-purpose. So the context of where you are matters. So when things change, but you don't elect to change with it, and you've always looked for the concreteness of whatever solution that you're looking for, you're going to be disappointed every single time.
Yes. So I'm going to translate that and tell you what I heard, okay? Because but like I said, I got this question about expectations in relationships, relationships. Should they exist? If so, in what way and why? Okay. And the reason why I'm asking that, and I'm gonna tell you what I heard from that and what I feel. I feel that expectations do exactly that. It sets you up for failure, or not for failure, but for being disappointed. When you see the context of the person for who they are, you can then assess how you address the situation, how you how you feel about it, what emotions you develop, what connections you have, what needs to be communicated. To me, those are kind of just standards, right? And to me, standards are different from expectations. And I've been waiting to say this. Standards are different from expectations because standards is just the bare minimum. Communication, integrity, trust, those kinds of things, right? But when you talk about expectations, I expect you to show up on time every time, I need you to pick me up. Or I expect you to just know how I'm feeling when I'm feeling it. I expect you to take me on dates every, weekend. I expect you. Those are the expectations that we have developed within our relationships to say that this person has to feel these expectations in order to satisfy me, right? And so when that person cannot do that and or things change in life, we're disappointed because I'm sitting here holding this person to a certain stand or a certain expectation to fulfill, for me to feel validated in this relationship when they can't do that, And so like you just said, when things change and you have to continuously change your expectations, then why do you have them? If you're going to have to change them all the time, right? Why not just assess and accept the person for who they are and or not accept for whatever, they're bringing to the table if it's not something that meets your standards and or what you need. So that's just a little bit about what I think. I can go on, but I want to give you opportunity to kind of expand on your idea of expectations based on what you were just saying, because I think that's how I think. And that's how I've learned. Let me say that. That's how I've learned, because when I look at my past relationships, I had all these expectations that I was trying to fit this person into this mold based on stuff that necessarily that I just made up. You know what I mean? Like stuff that I wanted for myself because of lacking, because of, some model of a relationship that I developed based on what was seen, you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like we impose them on each other, right? Without it being, legitimate, or make sense to fit the context. So, but tell me what you think. Am I wrong? Look, edify me, okay?
So you
help me figure this out.
You ain't wrong, Jan. You ain't wrong. But I would definitely say, in Theo's world, and I'm very, very specific when I say in Theo's world because this doesn't apply everywhere.
Right.
right?
Disclaimer. Okay.
Disclaimer, right? When this is the best example that I can give. You know, there are Apple people. There's Android people. All right. This is not.
Which one are you?
This is not being a phonist. This is not being a phonist. Okay. There are Apple people and there are Android people. Okay. We know that there's obviously a missing link between the two things where, you know, when you send an Android, when you're Apple to Android, it's a green screen. Okay. All right. So that's a well-known fact. That is the standard. Until it changes, that is the standard. That's how it's going to be. Right.
Sorry, your analogies are funny.
So if I then, because you have a phone, I have a phone, you're one or the other, and I text you, and then I expect it to turn blue, and it doesn't, I'm like, well, I don't understand. Why can't you just function the way that you're supposed to function? You got a phone, don't you? Why can't you FaceTime me?
Right.
I am so in my own world because my ego says everything that I expect should be the way that it is. And when it's not, I am going to then hold you responsible for not fulfilling an obligation that I didn't bother to understand the context of. Because if you understood the operating procedures of both Apple and Android, you would know that this is how it works in that context. So when it comes to human, because humans are complex, we expect each other to be the same person every time. And then we try to then hold you to your past self. You're going to be a different person next year. If I held you to this person next year, I am doing you a disservice because I haven't given you the autonomy to change. Because I'm expecting you to still be the same Jen that I met last year. So expectations are the biggest killer of the human dignity. So if I'm doing you a disservice by expecting you to be this person, I'm expecting you to show up as I imagined you in my head. And when you don't, it's your fault. You're supposed to play this role in my head that I assigned you when you are not capable. Then what that builds is resentment. So expectations aren't bad. Contextualized expectations aren't bad. Granted, in relationships, we'll say, hey, you know, let me communicate to you what I want, what I need. This is my best, you know, this is my baseline. Can you meet that? Okay, I'm going to try. Okay, yeah, let's work on the try.
Yeah.
I know you're not going to hit the mark perfect every time. I'm going to give you the human card and the human grace and say, hey, just do your best. But if I'm expecting you to always be, then I am also clipping your wings. I'm always expecting you to be that thing. And when you can't function as that thing that I expect you to be, now I'm disappointed. Now you're the person that's always wrong. That's the bad person. And so that's what expectations do to a relationship.
Yeah, I completely, I'm so glad you said it and said it in that way.
I had to give it 3 different ways in order.
Yeah, but no, because I think expectations has been the highlight of everybody. Expectations and boundaries. Those are like the highlight words, the key words to almost every relationship that, you know, we hear these conversations talking about. You got to have boundaries, expectations, right? And I hear boundaries more. What are boundaries? Like, what is the boundary? People often say, you got to have boundaries. You got to set healthy boundaries, right? But in your world, in Theo's world, I like that. That should be a thing.
Theo's world.
Theo's world. That sounds like something, right? But in Theo's world, what is boundaries when it comes down to a healthy, thriving relationship? I want to say in general, but I think more so intimately. I mean, friendships too, but we'll get to that. I want to know, like, when it comes down to like lovers, like people who are in a committed relationship, or dating, what are the actual, how would you define boundaries in those situations in Theo's world?
So I would say boundaries are, for me, in order for me to exist in this way, this is how far I can go. And this is how far I'm also willing to allow you to go in this context. If it's a boundary on a specific thing, you could say, well, hey, I don't feel safe when you do that. Okay, I can't control you, but I can tell you, hey, in order for me to feel safe, this is what I will do. Mm-hmm. So now I'm not trying to control you by saying I don't feel safe when you do that. I'm saying in order for me to feel safe, this is what I am going to do. Now, that gives you the go-ahead to decide, do I want to comply or do I not? To me, that's a boundary. To me, that's a healthy boundary because you're doing what you can control. You're not trying to control the other person, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, that's a healthy boundary. Hey, in order for me to exist in this world, I do not tolerate disrespect. I do not tolerate, being called on my name. This is what I don't tolerate. So when that is present, I will not be present because to me, that is what that's my threshold. So to me, that's a boundary. To me, that is a communicated boundary.
If somebody is dating somebody, mm-hmm. right, without any, I guess, because we're going to talk about it too, friends with benefits, mm-hmm. Without any like labels, mm-hmm. right? But they're sexually active, mm-hmm. right? And the boundary for them is, I'm not going to tell you about my escapades mm-hmm. because that ain't none of your business. Mm-hmm. This is where we stand. That's my boundary. Now, is that like a reasonable boundary?
I don't believe so. I think that's a very selfish way to live. I think if you're not communicating to the person who you're being intimate with about everybody else who you are intimate with, you're opening them up to a very unhealthy risk. Yeah. So it's like boundaries are more so to keep everybody safe in that context, mm-hmm. to keep everybody aware of what's present and what's not present.
So it's more of an open communication, right, is what I hear.
To me, that's what boundaries are. To me, boundaries is not a tall wall; it's a fence. It's more of like, okay, hey, this is where I live. Mm-hmm. In order for you to come over here, to exist in this little bubble that I live in my boundaries, this is what is required because this is what I do. This is, I take my shoes off when I walk into my boundary space. Right. So when you visit me in my boundary space.
It's so funny that you said that because I used to have to argue with people all the time to not wear your shoes in my house.
Like, I don't know why that's even an argument.
It's totally a thing. Like, all right.
Like, man, every time I come and visit you, I got to take my shoes off. Well, it's not my fault that you got ugly feet.
They don't even want to show. That's what it is. They don't want the truth to come out.
Right. You just don't want to show your nasty socks.
Wait, where's this voice coming?
And your unkept feet. Man, your feet be feeting, ain't it? Like,
seriously. Okay, but this makes a lot of sense though, what you're saying. And I'm glad that you are able to like articulate it in that way because not a lot of people see it that way. I think it's a very unique perspective. I think it's a fair perspective. Not to say that we're here just to agree, right? But at the end of the day, I get it. I understand that from a very open-minded sense of thinking in that right. If somebody said the opposite, I probably could kind of see or draw something from that as well. But another thing I wanted to ask you about was when kind of the pivot to this whole relationship thing, mm-hmm. because I touched on the not having those set sort of, labels in place and things like that. Do you feel like labels are important? Do you feel like people within the relationships, when they're dating and all these kind of things, right? Does everybody need to be striving to have these labels? Like, does everybody really need to be striving to be married and be...
No. Not like, to me.
In Theo's world.
In Theo's world, right? I'm going to give another probably terrible analogy, but here goes nothing. All right. Have you ever seen those memes where it said like somebody got mad and they took all the labeling of the cans and now they're just silver cans and you can't tell what's what? Right. In that term, or in that context, labels are important, right? Because it's an inanimate object that's not going to change. Mm-hmm. Labels on a human is different because things change with humans. So now you can be in a situation where you are trying to make sure that you're understanding where and what your role is in this situation. Okay, in that case, let's label this. This is what me and you are going, or proper English term, you and I are going to agree that in this context, this is what we define this thing as. So there's a definition so that there is an understanding. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to look like what everybody else feels like it. It doesn't matter. This is who we are to each other. Okay, cool, bet. Then that's an understood thing. The minute you start to chase other people's labels, though, you are then trying to manufacture a weakness. You're trying to manufacture something that doesn't and won't exist for you in that way. Because we've made it a point to make marriage or relationships this one thing when there's so many different ways that we can be in relationship. Mm-hmm. But because this one thing that society deems as worthy, then we say, well, in order for us to exist in this context, this is what it has to be. It has to be this. In order for God to bless us as individuals, we have to perform in this way, right? And this is what the narrative that is pushed. Because, one, we don't understand the historical context of the thing that we're trying to say. Everybody needs to chase. But we're then trying to put everything in this neat little bubble that says, in order for us to exist in the most favorable way for society, we need to exist in this way. But then we throw God into it, and then it becomes a whole other thing. And it's like, wait, so then what about the other people God's really been good to and really blessed? But they don't live in this context. What does that say about them, or what does that say about God? Does God love me any less because I'm not in that context? No. He listen. I ain't gonna preach. All right, I'm a PK, but that's my dad's job. You know, he's in the book boy. Jeremiah 1:5, and I'm gonna paraphrase this in a theoism way.
That's another word, theoism. Write that down.
Is it basically saying he knew me before I was born? As some people in the South would say, he been knowing me. He been knowing me way before I was even a thought. He been knowing me, who I was going to be, who I was going to die as. He saw the beginning and the end. He still created me for a purpose. So, with that being said, you telling me that the only way that I can achieve my purpose is through this? No, my purpose was given way before this existed.
Wow.
So I'm already present for my purpose. But yes, do I need help? Yeah, I do. Do I need, other people in relationship with me to help me achieve us? Yes, because we are created as communal beings. However, we are also created with this thing in mind, that our purpose isn't to end up in that box. Our purpose is to achieve what we are designed for. Now, if you choose to say, well, I'm only designed for this thing, okay, well, then you can go ahead and limit yourself and put yourself in a container and label yourself as that. Now, you can also choose to live in a societal means of relationship and say, okay, this is the only way that I get my approval. as, as a woman, as a man. I don't feel like I'm enough if I don't have this thing. Then now we're performing for this thing to exist.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like a lot of the relationships we develop or stem? Well, I already know this answer, but I want you to speak on it. Or stem from like our trauma and things that I want to say because remember we was talking, I was like talking about, my relationship and thinking about how a lot of my decisions within that relationship and just thinking about it in general stem from my relationship or the lack thereof with my father. And so do you feel like we are basically just kind of looking for that
familiarity?
Yeah.
I think we do. I mean,
like filling voids kind of thing.
Yeah, like we try to find people who can feed the need that we have. And often enough, we will find the person that feeds our need the most and say, you know what? You're familiar. So you fit well into this even though you don't have the right credentials to fit in this context, but because you feel so familiar, I think you're a good match. So we trauma match and then call it a relationship, or trauma bond, and then call it a relationship. But the amazing thing happens, which society will also deem as the opposite of, when you're in a relationship with somebody and you heal the trauma bond and you heal that trauma, or you start to work on that trauma that brought you together, you are no longer in sync with the other person. So that creates problems. So now the relationship is ruined because you decided to heal. But then society would say, well, bro, girl, why don't you just stay with him? Because I can no longer court, like we are no longer on the same wavelength, because I decided to do the work that was required for me to feel whole or to be whole and meet that need for myself. So my trauma no longer needs his trauma to exist. I'm working on myself.
Yeah. Do you feel like, sorry, I'm having a moment here. Do you feel like relationships require work? I feel like,
yeah.
And I feel the complete opposite. I do not want a relationship.
But work is different, though.
That
work is not
feels
performance.
like work. Like it needs to be free.
Right.
I don't want to work no more.
But that's the thing.
I will work on myself, because they made me think that. I'm like, I just feel like the work comes with self. Like you work on yourself so that you can be better within this relationship. So the things that you are, accustomed to, as far as the trauma and things like that, or the familiarity. I always struggle with that word, but being able to feel like this is a healthy relationship because of what I can, endure, or how I can communicate, and those kind of healthy boundaries, all those kind of things. You bring that into the relationship, and then the relationship should just, I feel like it just work. It just just should work. So, like, I don't think love should feel like work. I don't feel like, because I hear a lot of people say that, and I'm going to ask you my infamous question about love in a minute, but I hear a lot of people say that love takes work, relationships take work, and I just feel like, no, I am retired.
I am retired, and I no longer want it.
I don't want to work for a relationship. If we ain't already coming whole and making this thing work, and making it do what it do naturally and organically, where we can communicate with each other, and the things that we come and face with challenges, and like you said, changing, evolving. If we can't communicate and be on the same frequency as just two people that just like each other. I don't love versus like. I just want to like you. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, so
sorry.
Okay, so
I told you I've been ready for this conversation.
Like,
okay.
I think we look at work the same way we look at work that we get paid for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, a relationship work is different than performing for a paycheck. All right. So I think when people say work, it means conscious effort. Mm-hmm. Because I am in relationship with you, I'm going to make a conscious effort to communicate to my best of ability.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. Mm-hmm. So perhaps in Theo's world, that is what work looks like. It's being intentional about something that is so human. Right.
Okay.
Bringing into awareness, because it's like I can communicate with you subconsciously and not bother or anything else, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, no, but because I want to communicate, or I want you to still be in my life, I'm going to make a conscious effort to let you know how I'm feeling, instead of you having to kind of guess, like, sounds awful, looks a little off today.
So we should replace work with effort.
Yes, conscious effort. Because it's that's what the work is. I don't think it's like, man, I got to perform for this thing, because that's where then it becomes performative love versus actual love. Yes.
Speaking of love, because we let me see, we're coming up on our last 10 minutes here. So, okay. Speaking of love, I asked everybody this question, and who better than to ask you? But also, I want to kind of ask you, because I mentioned something about love and like. Mm-hmm. Which one is more important to you?
Like.
Okay, that's it. Period. All right. And if you want, you can expand on why. Okay, but tell me.
In short.
Tell me how love is such a human thing. Mm-hmm. So many people have been on this show, and I've gotten, like, I'm making a whole collection, a compilation of these different definitions of love. I think love as a creative, as a person who, looks to help people, as somebody that connects with people. I think it's just something that's very important that we get our hands on, that we understand truly what it means, because it's so varied, across people, and then men versus women. Everybody has said something very different. So my question for you is, how do you define love? And you can expand on love versus like as well.
So for me, love is human, right? Like, as you said, like you you don't have, as a human being, as a woman, you don't need to tell me, hey, I am a woman. You are. Like, there's not, like, you don't need to announce yourself as that. You are that. We are created with love as we are. So love is innately human, right? So it's like, love is going to grow naturally. But I think like goes back to that conscious effort. The like part is, I am choosing. Like is like, I am choosing to like you. I am choosing to like you. Because I'm choosing to like you, I am going to then be conscious of how I treat you. I'm going to be conscious of how I treat your most human person. In that way, it will allow you to feel loved. It will allow you to experience more of your humanity. That means I am going to give you grace where you are your most human. I am going to allow to still choose you, because I want to make the conscious effort to keep you in my presence. But also giving you the choice to not be my presence. Because again, as human, you have free will. Who am I? I'm not God. Who am I to take that away from you and say, well, no, you have to love me. You have to. No, you don't. You don't even have to like me, but you get to choose to love me or to like me. So to me, love is very human. Like is a conscious way of expressing that human thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I wish we had more time, because there are some other topics that just started firing off in my head. So we have to connect some other way.
Okay.
We have to, I'm going to have to get you back on the show.
Let's do it.
We're going to figure this out.
Okay.
Because there's much more depth that I want to go into when it comes down to like what you were just saying, because there's so many people who define love as abuse. They associate love with filling in the gaps from where they didn't receive love or neglect. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. Oh, well, he come home at night, even though there's certain things that that are not right, about that relationship, but they still stay within those relationships. So I wanted to really talk about that thing that we have when we're like you were saying, the trauma bonding, when we are, it's hard to get out of a relationship, and what that looks like for so many people, particularly, Black women, men, whatever. It doesn't even necessarily, it's just anybody when it comes down to those kind of relationships where we are in those relationships and almost feel stuck, you know what I'm saying? To that point where you were just saying, like, you start to recognize that things are changing and we're not on the same frequency anymore. And why is it so hard for people to love from a distance? Like, just because, this is my personal opinion, just because I love you doesn't mean I like you. It's not the same.
It's not the same.
I can certainly love you, right? Still. But if I don't like you.
Right. I can love your most human self and choose to also distance myself away.
Absolutely. Without no resentment,
I
hate.
like me more.
Right. On that note, tell them how to follow you. Tell them how to connect with you. Thank you, first of all, for coming on the show. But please let the people know how they can reach Mr. Edify and get a little taste of Theo's world.
It ain't much there. It's bare. No. So you can find me on Instagram at Theo.Brown-T. Actually, no, that doesn't exist. It's Theo Brown.T on Instagram. Or you can put Edify Coaching in there. Or you can put Edify Curls. Either way, you'll see my face. I'll be on a profile. So that is how you can get a hold of me. And/or just ask Jen. She'll get a hold of me.
I know all the things. Google here.
She knows all the things.
All the things,
all the things. And my last message to anybody out there: listen. Until you feel that you are enough, or until that you know that you are enough, nobody outside of you can ever make you enough.
There it is. I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you so much for coming. Thank you so much. And you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Poetic JustUS Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe. Give me some comments, share. Let me know what your thoughts are. We touched on a lot of topics on today. So if you have any opinions, we would love to hear it. Also, make sure you check out my website at www.justrightconsultant.com. You can also follow me on IG as well at Jen_just_right. Shout out to my partners, the Raleigh Film and Art Festival. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.